Hello, welcome to ACABTrueCrime. I am excited to do another live tonight. I have been feeling pretty motivated to do this case right now that's going on, or that I'm going to present, because, well, for a lot of reasons. So yeah, today I'm going to focus on the Lindsay Clancy trial. And so yeah, the case actually just rested today. So both of the let's see, hold on. Sorry, my bad. I shouldn't even try to make these. Sometimes the outlines I make just distract me. But yeah, but specifically I'm going to react to the trial from someone that has completed forensic evaluations before. And these are forensic psych and neurocognitive evaluations, including psychosis and criminal responsibility questions. So basically everyone that's been testifying in this trial over the last 4 weeks. So I'll focus on the mental health evaluations and the postpartum psychosis part of it, and then also how we assess responsibility, and I'll skip the sensational details. But I also do want to touch briefly on the Latasha Sanders case. And also, just to give the disclaimer, this will all be educational commentary, and I haven't evaluated any of these people, so I'm not making any statements on that. And so yeah, what I'm thinking that this will look like tonight. So I'm going to just give everyone a little bit of an update about the trial currently, and I'm going to end up reviewing a testimony at the second half of this video, and I'll explain kind of why I chose that testimony to review. And basically, yeah, this is for everyone that hasn't kept up with the trial, and if you have kept up with the trial, you might want to skip forward if you're watching this on the replay to a time that I start watching I'm sure it'll make a chapter and I'll note the time, but I'm going to try to keep this part only 15-20 minutes to kind of just give people that don't know about this case a little bit of a history and talk about kind of what specifically I think would be helpful for me to put input on or into. So yeah, like I said, the evidence testimony completed today in this trial. Today is Wednesday. Well, it just turned Thursday, August 27th, is it? Yeah. And so this is a trial that's in Massachusetts. So they have a Commonwealth. They don't have the state attorneys, or just, I don't really know exactly, but they're the Commonwealth, and they're the prosecutors that are trying this case against Lindsay Clancy. And Lindsay is the defense, and basically what this case is it's oh well, let me just wrap up for where we are. So they both, the defense and the prosecution or Commonwealth, finished doing any testimony evidence today, and tomorrow they will be doing the closing arguments, and then they'll be going to a verdict watch where the jury will get the floor, or just, so they'll start, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe there might be a verdict by Friday. So I thought it might be, I've been trying to I've been thinking as I've been keeping up with this trial somewhat, not completely, but there's been a lot of parts that I've been damn, I really want to say something about this, but then I'm I don't know how to present this. Should I do the entire review? So I think this will be the best way for me to kind of contribute a little bit of my knowledge, while also not doing the entire rewatch of the trial, and just reacting specifically to the expert testimonies from 3 of the forensic psychologists and psychiatrists, because I think that's relevant, obviously, to what we're talking about here. And yeah, a huge portion of this case has pretty much only been hearing from psychiatric and psych testimony and experts and stuff. So but yeah, so I figured, yeah, instead of lecturing or making a big presentation, that I'll review important testimony and then react to it, because it does always seem when I'm watching stuff I'll be like, I'll have a comment about it. So instead of having to like pull it out of my ass, like it'll be like right in front of me and I can be like, no, that's not true. You know what I mean? So, let's see. All right. So like I said, we'll do a really quick case background right here. And I also want to do a little bit like, well, within the case background, I think it's also really important to get a pretty thorough understanding or like pretty good grasp on what it means, or like what her timeline of care was. So I'll like be looking specifically at the dates and like also describing the different types of treatment, because I feel like that wasn't done super well from this like things that I watched. And also I have not watched this entire trial, so that might have been like another reason why I was a little bit confused about it. But so yeah, so and that's stuff that I all have experience with and that I have a pretty um good understanding of what those different types of treatments are, and also like how they diagnose and what they do in order to complete certain evaluations, and like ethically what's appropriate, what's not in different roles as evaluators and stuff. So I'll talk about that a little bit. And then I will, I guess, yeah, touch a little bit on what they're arguing about in terms of the experts. And I'll then get into watching and reacting to the testimony. And I'm going to start with Dr. Sadhoff for that today. And then there's two other ones that I think I'll cover like tomorrow or the next day, which are Dr. Philip Resnick and Dr. Kirk Hilbrun. And one of them is the defense and one of them is Commonwealth. And this Sadhoff was today's witness that ended, and he's challenging the command hallucination explanation. And he emphasized her organized and sequential behavior, and concluded that Lindsay could appreciate wrongfulness and remained criminally responsible. So, yeah. So, anyways, I just figured that that would be a good place to start, just because of the recency bias, and it did seem like a good place to look at stuff. So, okay. So, like I said, I'll try to just briefly go over the case from what we have now. Hopefully, this will only take like 15 minutes. So Lindsay Clancy, who's on trial, she was the mother to 3 young children. The youngest was Callan, and he was born in May of 2022. And by fall of 2022, we see Lindsay starting to seek out and receive psychiatric care and support, like mental health support. And then we see that over the next couple of months, her psychiatric condition really worsening significantly. And then on January 24th of 2023, Lindsay ended up unaliving or red rumming her 3 children, and also tried to take her own life, but wasn't successful, but became paralyzed from her method of trying, which was jumping out of a window. And the way that she red rummed the children was using exercise bands in order to suffocate them. So the central trial question has been like not really at all who committed this crime, although there is some separate conversations happening on social media that are talking about the possibility of her husband, Patrick Clancy, actually being the unaliver. And I think, it's worth bringing up and noting here, but I just want to say that I like pretty strongly disagree with that theory, and I feel like I see a lot of evidence to point to the fact that it was Lindsay, and that we should be focusing more on that aspect than trying to pull someone else into this who, I think in different ways could have maybe been accused of contributing to this outcome, but I think, what I've seen from all of the testimony so far in the case is that it really is kind of entire system failing that got us here. Like, there were so many things that kind of had to go wrong in different areas for this to get to this point. And unfortunately, with this case, that is the steps that happened. And I think a lot of it does have to do with our messed up health system and the way that we deal with just healthcare in general in this country, which is so silly and dumb, and it leads us to situations like this. So anyways, the major dispute really that's going on from within the trial is more about whether or not Lindsay should be criminally responsible due to her mental state. So basically, she's trying to say she shouldn't be criminally responsible because she had a mental state that didn't allow her to be based like in reality and know that or truly understand or be capable of understanding criminal responsibility. So the important thing I think is, before getting into the testimony that I'll be reviewing, is to go over the history psychiatrically of Lindsay leading up to January 24th, which is like when she took the kids. So let's see. All right, so here's a little bit of a compressed mental health timeline and treatment for the levels of care that she was receiving. And let's see. So we see like I said, she started receiving care from the there's an outpatient psychiatric treatment program that Lindsay started meeting with a psychiatrist and a supposedly mental health team to deal with psych symptoms that she was having trouble with. And that was middle of September of 2022. And again, she had Callan, the latest child. She had 3 children, all under the age, I think, of 5. The youngest was Callan, who was born in May of 2022. And here we're picking up on her receiving psychiatric care in the mid-September of 2022 area. So where she met, or where she started receiving care from, was a facility called like Astor. Let's see, I have notes on this specifically. Well, it's with Dr. Tufts, and it was at Astor, and Astor is okay, here we go. This is helpful. I wonder, maybe I should share this with you guys. That might make it like less boring. Shit. Whatever. Okay. No. Right. Okay. I'm gonna use this one for now, I guess. I don't know if you guys will be able to read that, so maybe it's better for me to do this one. I'm gonna do this one. All right, so this is kind of my little like cheat sheet here for the different types of care she was receiving. So the first place that she received care was at Astor Mental Health, which is in scheduled outpatient psychiatry place. So this is private outpatient mental health practice. It's not a hospital. It's not emergency services. It's not partial hospital programs or inpatient units. And the facility provides psychiatric evaluations, medication management, psychotherapy, and other office-based treatment. So it's basically like community mental health care center, but private. And they offer both inpatient and online appointments. And so Lindsay started meeting with Dr. Tufts, who was her psychiatrist that she was meeting with from Aster for her medication regimen. And so Lindsay located Dr. Tufts independently online and arranged an appointment with her on September 22nd, 2022. And she started receiving medication treatment at that time. And then she continued meeting with her. And then, and at the time when she was meeting with her, what was reported under the records that were kept by Dr. Tufts was anxiety, depression, insomnia, and sleep problems. And then her meds start. And she started taking Zoloft, which is a antidepressant at that time. And it was up to like 50 milligrams, which isn't a lot. And then she goes through November, and then in November the symptoms continue, and she keeps talking about she's having more difficulty getting sleep. And she visits the South Shore emergency room for acute emergency care at the time. And from that, she got transferred to a prenatal program, which specialized in outpatient postpartum care. And then I think the next one is you'll see here this pattern of her receiving so many different types of care, and none of it being like really, it's all fragmented and it's not like comprehensive or cohesive at all, which is like a huge problem. And again, is like another symptom of our shitty healthcare system here in America, because there's actually like incentives to not share information with other providers, which is like silly. And like we see as we go through these providers that she was seeing, like not all of them that she saw over the span of like 2 months, she saw like 8 different doctors or some shit. And they ended up like giving her all these different medications. And you see that the doctors didn't even read each other's like reports from when they were like meeting with her, overlapping the same times, even though they were all prescribing like medications to her. And at one point, her main like Dr. Tufts, like she mentions that like she's like, someone needs to be in charge of her medications, just like one main, go-to person that, kind of is the main medication provider, but then doesn't do anything about it. Although I think this happened before they could actually probably get that together. So, anyways, yeah, like what I said here, we get to the South Shore Emergency Department, which is like an acute emergency medical assessment. So she brought herself to the ER, and it was not specialized in perinatal care. And what she reported, this was on November 16th, she went there, and her symptoms, she reported to be in severe insomnia there, anxiety and palpitations like of her heart racing. And let's see. Okay, yeah, and it looks like the ER physician prescribed her trazodone for sleep. And then, okay. Okay, so yeah, that was just an ER visit there. Discharged, like seen, given trazodone by the ER doctor, and then released. So that was November 16th. So obviously she was showing up at an ER. She's having significant enough symptoms to show up to an ER, even though she's receiving ongoing care. So I feel like that's super significant, and the ER is like, what? I don't know why you're already receiving care. I don't know what else I can really do for you. And that makes me think that she was having trouble being able to describe and explain like her experiences and thought processes, which is a huge symptom of psychosis. Like psychosis can be like under the actual like DSM and the criteria. In order to have psychosis diagnosed, you have to either have hallucinations or delusions and disorganized thought. So, I mean, I definitely believe that she had delusions and disorganized thought and probably hallucinations too, but we'll get into that. So, anyways, then on November 20th, this was, I believe it was like her mom or her mother-in-law. Yes. Okay. So then this is like 4 days after she goes to the ER reporting like horrible symptoms. Hey, Mike, good to see you. Long time no see. Have you been following the Lindsay Clancy trial at all? Or how are you in general? It's good to see you. I'm like just going over a short like review of the Lindsay Clancy trial and her timeline of events leading up to when she red rummed her 3 kids and tried to off herself. So I'm trying to keep it like short and to the point because I just want to do like a brief introduction, and then I'm going to try to go into reacting to testimony that ended today from some of the expert witnesses. And I just want to say that I have like done exactly what these expert witnesses were requested to do for certain clients and working on certain like evaluations through different like means too. Like I have done like different types of assessments like from within the correctional environment, and then I've also done like neuropsych evals and criminal responsibility evaluations like through a private forensic psychologist where he was like testifying and he'd been on like Dateline and shit, and I trained with him and completed a lot of these, so I feel like I have a pretty good background there. You retired 2 months ago? Hell yeah, that's awesome. Congrats. Um, oh, if you haven't, okay, if you have not followed this trial, like I feel like it pisses a lot of guys off to be off, like I guess honest, because not all of them, but I do feel like I see a lot of men being like, "What the fuck? You can just murder your kids and get off on it? No, she's like a murderer, you know?" And I'm like, this kind of shows like how little men I feel like probably understand the like inner workings of a mother, especially after someone has just given birth. Um, and I shouldn't, I'm not like a mother, so I can't really say like from my own perspective what that would be like, but I have worked with enough people that had really like, significant psychosis, hallucinations. I feel like I have worked with a lot of different people with it and understand the presentations and know how to like document and interpret things that a lot of these doctors, I don't even think, um, YouTube and travel. That's awesome, Landon. Oh my God, that's like my life goal. If I could just YouTube and travel, like I would ask for nothing more in my life. It's like I really would. I used to travel a ton. Like I have actually traveled, not to brag, but I've traveled to like 30 different countries. And that's not having traveled to any different countries in the past like 10 years. So by the time I was like 30, I had visited like 30 different countries and like lived and worked in different places and stuff too. So I love traveling, and I really wish, because so all of that took place basically before like 2013. And that's like really when I feel like YouTube started getting really big and like doing channels and stuff. But if it had been like a decade later, I feel like I probably could have started a YouTube channel, and it would have been like pretty funny of me just like traveling and like doing ridiculous things, and but also like meeting really cool people and like contributing to the societies there and like living there, and like, but anyways, that's just my dream, so don't mind me and going into, you know fantasy land here. But where do you want to travel first? The first place to, Landon? I mean, Mike. I always try to call you Landon, but Mike. Also, I don't know if you guys have heard of these. I like don't usually drink at home, but I was thinking I've been like I get anxious every time before I go live. So trying to like do things that like help me feel more comfortable doing it. And so I've been like, I bought some of these. They're called like wellness tonics. So they're similar to like THC drinks, but these also include like different herbs and shit. So this one, so it's from Liftbridge Brewing, which I'm pretty sure is like a Minnesotan thing, which is where I live. Anyways, these are super expensive too. Nice. Okay, well, oh my God, I love Idaho though. Seriously. Like, okay, well, thanks for stopping in. It's good to see you. It's always good to see you, Mike. Thank you for being here. But I'm planning on going live like the next couple of days too. So hopefully I'll catch up with you then too. Like tomorrow, I'm thinking of streaming the closing arguments for this trial that I'm kind of touching on tonight. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that. Anyways, yeah, I'm just gonna finish this quick little comment about this like little Liftbridge Brewing thing. It's it's like pretty expensive. Like 12 pack of these wellness tonics, I think was like almost like $40 fucking dollars, which is pretty lame. But it is kind of cool. Like in here, so it says it has benefits in adaptogens. It is called, oh yeah, see, Believer Wellness Tonic, and there's like 4 different types of them. So this one is Focus, another one is like Energy, another one is called Float, and then I think the other one is called I can't remember what the other one was called. But anyways, oh maybe Float and Dream, but I feel like Float and Dream would be probably the same, so I can't remember the 4th one. Doesn't matter. But this one is Focus, and it's flavored lemon, berry, basil, and it has cordyceps and ginseng, and then 5 milligrams of THC and 5 milligrams of CBD. But there's another one, like the Energy one. I know that one has like lion's mane, which is the like herb extract from mushrooms. I don't know, but I like these. I endorse these too. But yeah, that's what I'm drinking right now. So cheers to everybody that's watching right now. Okay, so in November, so we see that like Lindsay went to the ER, and which like tells of an emergency. There was like an emergency happening. It wasn't like, hey, I can just call my like provider tomorrow. It was like, I need help right now. And then it was like, oh no, you already see a provider, so don't worry about that. We'll just discharge you and you can keep meeting with Astra Mental Health and Dr. Tufts. So then like 4 days later, we see that she is referred to South Shore Perinatal Behavioral Health Program, which is a specific outpatient perinatal psychiatry. So it is a distinct outpatient behavioral health program within South Shore's just health center, and designed specifically for pregnant and postpartum patients up to generally 2 years after birth. And they offer medication management, short-term therapy, individualized plans, and referrals into longer-term community care. And that they treat anxiety, depression, bipolar spectrum mood disorders, birth trauma, PTSD, and substance use disorder. And it looks like here they see a lot of people. Night, Mike. They go through a ton of intakes, and so they probably have pretty good experience treating this condition, whereas Astra outpatient psychiatry does not it's not a specialty in postpartum medication management, which is definitely its own thing. So it's nice that there is this option here that South Shore was able to provide to Lindsay, and it was called the Perinatal Behavioral Health Program within the South Shore Health conglomeration. And apparently on November 20th, so this is 4 days after Lindsay went to the ER, and was given trazodone and just told to like go home and continue meeting with her care team. Then 4 days later, she's talking to her mother-in-law, who is a nurse who actually is a like labor nurse, I think. She oh, it doesn't say here, but yeah, her mom was definitely like a nurse for like the last 20 years, specifically working on like birth units, which Lindsay also did too. So they were lucky to be able to know the I guess more risk areas and stuff with this type of stuff, and even know who to go to and where to get help because of those more specialties in those areas. And we still see, even with that like upper hand knowledge, I guess, about these disorders, they still weren't able to attain, you know, management and treatment that was effective for her. Anyways, so her mother-in-law talks to and contacts this perinatal program specifically in the South Shore health system, talks to them, explains a little bit about what Lindsay has been going through. And then it looks like the next day, Lindsay is meeting with a new psychiatrist from this specific perinatal medication management treatment program, where you should be receiving treatment there, and then later they would like kind of, you know, get you into longer term care, like what she's doing at Astor. Like Astor should have been like last care for her, not like the only and first, if that makes sense. Like she should have come from a specific perinatal like medication management psychiatry program, and then after having, you know, been able to receive, you know, specified treatment for that at this center, then they'll refer you out to like a community health care place like Astor Mental Health, where she was going. Anyways, so on November 21st, a woman and I think it was Dr. Julie Paul, began seeing and assessing Lindsay and giving her prescribed medications starting November 21st. So now she has two doctors that are prescribing her medication, and also a ER doctor that prescribed her some medication too. That's not ongoing, but these two doctors are. Then she started seeing a new doctor at that same place like a week later, Dr. Joletta, I think is how you pronounce her name. And that was in that same outpatient program. And Lindsay continued meeting with this medication provider for another like 5 or 6 weeks after she started seeing them. So now we're hearing she's in 2 different outpatient programs, one of them specifically for perinatal care, and then the other one just for general psychiatry. But neither of them have read the other person's notes about their treatment of her, which seems super strange. Same thing with the ER. Like, no one read about her. I'm pretty sure no one read. I know for a fact Dr. Tufts didn't read her emergency room documentation. And to me, that raises a huge red flag. And it suggests to me, by the way, this is Leela, my cat. She'll be back. But it suggests to me that she, oh wait, what was I just saying? I think that a lot of people weren't interpreting how she was presenting correctly, and they might have come in with a particular bias, or they ended up coming to like an assumption or conclusion that wasn't accurate. And I think that happens a lot, and I've seen it happen a ton in correctional and forensic psychiatry and psychology specifically, because I feel like it's in an environment where I guess someone is always being questioned and not believed. So instead of going into it like really listening to what they're reporting and not just assuming and trying to catch them in a lie, if you actually like listen to it and try to like interpret it in ways that might actually fit into like how you understand the disorder or whatnot, And I don't think that she was ever really given that like care before this happened, like to her kids. And I think Dr. Tuff specifically, and maybe the ER doctors too, like might have thought that she was medication seeking, because it looks like you'll just see it. I don't want to get caught up. Like, this is not what I wanted to do, was like go down this like kind of rabbit hole of like all these specific dates and medications and stuff. I think we will get into that like as we go through the testimony. But I do want to just get the general main point to see how often Lindsay was seeking out treatment, looking for help, reporting stuff, reporting things in a certain way, and all of it was so fragmented. And there was no way that she could have been receiving decent and adequate care if she was having trouble with all these symptoms throughout all of these months, and she kept worsening, and all these medications like that she was being given by all these different like doctors weren't helping her for the most part. And actually we'll see that when they did seem to kind of help her, they didn't want her to stay on them for too long because they thought that they were like habit forming, which I'm like, we shouldn't be like worried about habit forming right now when this is the only medication that is relieving this woman of psychosis, of wanting to off herself and her children, you know? Anyways, so we see that at the end of November into middle of January, she is receiving care from South Shore Perinatal Unit, and also then still receiving care from Tufts at Astor, like up to the middle of December. Then on December 20th, she went to Women's and Infants in Rhode Island, which is a separate program from South Shore. The perinatal unit, it's a day hospital. And it was a partial hospitalization day treatment program specifically focused on postpartum mental health. And the, wait, what is, I don't know. Oh, MGH is, I think it's Astor, damn it. Anyways, it says here, following a December 20th emergency evaluation, Lindsay was evaluated at Women's and Infants Hospital. And it said that the program concluded that its particular day treatment setting was not suitable for her and discharged her after approximately 1 day. So specifically, though, yes, so this is when she went to a different ER at that time. And so she went middle of November, then she went middle of December. So twice now she's seen emergency rooms. So she's having emergency symptoms. And in these, if someone would have actually read them, she was reporting hopelessness, intrusive thoughts, suicidal ideation, and multiple emergency department visits. So to me, that is someone that is looking for treatment and really trying to find the best treatment for her, not medication seeking. Like, she's really trying to get help. And apparently from that ER visit that she had mid-December, she was referred to an emergency assessment at the Women's and Infants in Rhode Island. So basically they did a transfer from the general emergency room into the Women's and Infants in Rhode Island, the outpatient program. And they said that they were not able to give her treatment from that program, which again, like I said, it was a partial hospitalization and day program, which would have been perfect for her at the level that she needed care and was like exhibiting, symptoms, and specifically focused on what she was experiencing, postpartum mental health. And they said the program concluded that its particular day treatment setting was not suitable for her and discharged her after approximately 1 day. And it says that is likely the facility being discussed when testimony refers to determining whether she fit the postpartum day program. Okay, so then now we're into, so just to give it a little overview of December. So we're seeing she has a decrease in symptoms of or an increase in severity of symptoms. She had worsening depression. She was reporting hopelessness. She was reporting intrusive thoughts. This is all documented in her paperwork that was in her medical records over the month of December. But it was across so many different treatments and documentations and centers and no one, took the time and the initiative to review and read everything that she was actually experiencing. So in December, we see that SI, suicidal thoughts, start coming up. Again, the ER evaluation, they end up showing that they're considering treatment level, a higher level of treatment, such as referring her to this outpatient day program or partial hospitalization. And there were multiple providers involved. So I think that this is where Tufts also brought up that there was a big concern with her seeing multiple medication providers and needing to have one person manage her medications. Sorry, my cat's coming through here. Come on through, Lila. Say hello to the people. Do you want to say hi? Okay. This is Lila. You want to say hi to the nice people, Lila? I don't know if you can see her. Maybe I can. Hi, Lila. I love it when she sits behind me when I record. Okay, so I've already gone on for 45 minutes, so I need to move on. But I'll just really quick wrap this up within the next 10 minutes, hopefully. I'm going to put a timer on it. I'm 42 minutes in, and so I have to be done with this no matter what by 52. Okay, so then in January, we see that she again gets put into a voluntary inpatient psychiatric hospitalization at McLean. Oh, this was when she went to the ER. So this is the third time she goes to the ER, and McLean Hospital ends up transferring her to a inpatient psychiatric hospitalization at McLean. So instead of being at the general ER, they were like, hey, go stay at our psych unit. But it was voluntary. She wasn't under medical 72-hour hold or anything. The only way you can get a doctor to force someone to be hospitalized is if they get put on a 72-hour hold. And since there's a certain criteria that you have to meet in order for that to be put on a person, and since we live in America and thankfully we have autonomy and our government is not that involved with telling us what we need to do, that is nice, but that shouldn't mean that someone's not still receiving adequate and comprehensive care. We always want an individual to be receiving the lowest level care, or the least intrusive care that can be for them, I guess successful for them in treating whatever. So anyways, she shows up to she's evaluated at McLean inpatient psych unit. She was there for about 5 days. She checked in on the 1st and then was checked out from this psychiatric unit on the 5th. And what went on there, here it is. Okay. Oh, okay. It's a freestanding psychiatric hospital. It's also a major Harvard Medical School psychiatric affiliate. and it provides inpatient, residential, partial hospital, and outpatient care. It's a locked facility for safety, and patients are observed super closely and frequently, like around the clock. And that is like, she went to Massachusetts General Hospital the end of December. Then they transferred her to McLean, and then she remained there until January 5th, and she was a voluntary inpatient on a locked unit, so she could check out whenever she wanted to. She wasn't like forced to be there. And yeah, she was discharged on the 5th because she wanted to go to a birthday party, and they let her. There was nothing stopping them, but they also should have been aware that she was presenting with a lot more, like if they really understood what was going on with her at that time, they would not have probably let her voluntarily discharge. So, but let's see. So we see here in January, she goes there and she receives voluntary inpatient psychiatric hospitalization. She is reporting severe depression, suicidality still, numbness. So this is like feeling like it's called like endohony or something. And it's like where you are flat affect, no feelings, like feeling like you're detached from yourself, like not really feeling like engaged and fully, I guess, based in reality. And it also means like disorganized thoughts or difficulty communicating. And I think we can see that definitely as a symptom in Lindsay at this time. But she also, it was not reported at any point in January again that there was psychosis. But so yeah, she's discharged from there, returns to outpatient. So now she's going back to the same outpatient treatment from, I think, those 3 different centers. Either, I mean, for sure the perinatal program from South Shore, and then Astor, and then I think she was also receiving care from was it the Women and Infant Center? Maybe she didn't receive ongoing care, but she was for sure receiving ongoing care from at least 2 outpatient cares, still remaining depressed and reporting severe depression. On January 16th, she reports that her bonding with Callan is described as feeling forced. So again, like not really being able to feel connections with people, or just kind of feeling a little bit flat. And she sees Tufts the day before the incident happened. So that was on the 23rd. So during that meeting, she is reported to be depressed. And it was in the documentation saying no psychosis was observed, and that there was no homicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts. At least that's what it was reported, that she denied those. But we know that she did report suicidality at the beginning of the month when she checked herself into the ER, you know, but no one again decided to like read that information. Anyways, the timeline ends with that meeting with Tufts on January 23rd. And then on the 24th is when she took the lives of the 3 kids and tried to kill herself by jumping out of her window and becoming paralyzed. So I think main stuff to be taken away from all of that is that we see a pretty significant deterioration of her mental health over the months that she's receiving care for her mental health that she sought out treatment for herself. And the repeated clinicians not documenting any psychosis is for sure notable. But I definitely feel like that by no means rules out that she was actually experiencing psychosis, and just wasn't able to, or for whatever, a lot of different reasons, was not being a great reporter. And we see that a lot with people who are psychotic. When they end up not being great historians and reporters. Like, it's hard for them to really even completely understand what's going on, and for sure being able to communicate what's going on. So I think, instead of being so exact, did she say this and was it written in this report, we need to be looking at the big picture and taking, especially when it comes to psychosis, we need to be able to apply that knowledge and critically think outside of maybe exactly what they're reporting in order to get an appropriate diagnosis and treatment care. So that, in my opinion, but I think that is definitely what has made the forensic dispute of all these experts really important in this case, and basically be like the main focus throughout the last 4 weeks of the trial. Yeah, so anyways, basically we see different levels of care with different clinicians doing different jobs, moving through a fragmented treatment system, not continuously being evaluated by one psychiatric team with all the same information. And we see her receiving, distinguishing between different treatments of outpatient treatment, outpatient psych treatment, outpatient or inpatient psych treatment, emergency room, partial hospitalization, outpatient program, treatment center. Yeah, a bunch of stuff. So, and some of those being specifically focused on perinatal conditions. So, but I think what the most important thing to think of is not whether or not she was mentally ill. I think all of the testimony that we see in the trial, for the most part that I saw, I'm pretty sure that this is a fact. We see that she was suffering from severe, psychiatric conditions, and she was not psychiatrically well. And I think that there is a lot of solid evidence to prove that. So I think more of what the real question is, or the real questions that they're asking within this trial, and that the both defense and prosecution or Commonwealth are trying to get at in their questioning, is some of these questions, which are, was she psychotic on January 24th? Did she experience actual hallucinations? Did she actually hear a voice? Because that was like a big thing that maybe she only reported it once. And if she did experience those things, did it have an effect on her behavior? And to what extent did it have an effect on her behavior? So also, did she understand that red roaming her children was wrong? Which I think is a weird question in itself. That's such a morality question. What do you mean wrong? But if she was hallucinating that it was the right thing to do, that's why she did it. You know what I mean? But asking whether or not she could conform her behavior. So, having maybe these intrusive and confusing, disorganized, scary thoughts, was she able to detach herself from those experiences and being able to still kind of not conform her behavior to go along with those experiences? And also, how much of disorder, how much of the fact that she might have been showing organization and planning behaviors contradict her experience of psychosis? And how much should we trust statements that she made about the crime, and that might be depending on where she's at in the treatment process? And also, why are we, I guess, what do we do with months of documentation that she was receiving and records from and about severe mental illness, but generally no observed psychosis? So again, where I'm coming from, I think it is really meaningful and notable that there was no observed is the important word there, psychosis. but that does not mean that, and that doesn't rule out the fact that she could have still been actively psychotic, even though it was not reported and observed in these documents in her treatment care. And yeah. Okay, so just really, really quick, only 2 minutes. Like I said, I think I decided on 3 experts that I'm going to be reviewing. I did pretty good. It's 55 minutes instead of 52 that I said I would give myself to end, and I'm ending now. But I am going to just, I guess, in order to orient you all a little bit better to the disagreement here between the Commonwealth and the defense in this trial, I think to get a greater understanding and for me to be able to speak and put my input into it, the best way to go about that is to review some of the more important expert testimonies. So I'm going to look at the defense testimony from Dr. Resnick, and that is the defense. And he basically, or they said that mental illness did affect criminal responsibility and that she was experiencing hallucinations, and they diagnosed her with bipolar, and that she also was having issues with postpartum psychosis. Then I'll also look at the Commonwealth's expert witness, Dr. Kirk Heilbrunn, and this is an interesting one to review, I think, because he's kind of nuanced where he is accepting the fact that she had a severe mental illness and that she was genuinely suicidal, but that he came to the conclusion that she wasn't experiencing postpartum psychosis, and that she did appreciate the wrongfulness and understood the wrongfulness behind her behaviors, and so therefore he believed she should be held criminally responsible for those red rummings of her 3 children. And then finally, the witness that I'm going to review tonight is Dr. Sathoff, and I'm choosing him as well because he ended today, so there's kind of like a recency bias, like that people probably remember the testimony already. And this testimony definitely challenged the command hallucination and auditory hallucinations, and really was focusing on her organization and like sequential behaviors, which suggested to him that he should conclude that she could appreciate the wrongfulness and that she should be held criminally responsible. So I think he also rejects some of the Commonwealth's more simplistic characterizations of Lindsay, which is interesting as well. So yeah, I think most of the issues that we'll be discussing tonight during that testimony is her criminal responsibility, the mental illness that she was experiencing or not, her intentions, whether or not like her organized behavior meant anything, psychosis, and her command hallucinations. So I think we'll end the overview there. Thank you for bearing with me through that. And I will pull up the actual testimony here. So I'm going to start with, oh shit. Okay. Oh, what the hell, damn it. Oh no, here we go. Okay. Oh shit. Let's see. Yep. Yep. Okay, here we go.
Attorney Sprague.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Can you please state and spell your name?
All right, so hopefully that volume is okay. I don't know. Hopefully it is. And I put it at a playback speed of 1.5 for now. And I have the closed captions on. So just to briefly give a little bit of an overview of like what I'm going to be talking about and commenting on during his testimony here. I think right here, so this is his testimony from yesterday, or well, I guess Tuesday. And this video is a total of an hour and a half almost, but I'm playing it at 1.5 playback speed. So that means that I'll be getting done with it a half an hour earlier. So it'll only be an hour testimony. So maybe that's just everything that I'll cover today. And then tomorrow I'll review his testimony from today or see how I feel tonight. So let's do this.
For the record.
Yes, first name is Gregory. Gregory, last name Saathoff, Saathoff.
And can you describe for us your educational background?
Yes, I received my undergraduate degree at the University of Notre Dame, and then my medical degree, my MD, at the University of Missouri, and then my residency in psychiatry at the University of Virginia.
And can you describe for us your occupation?
Yes, I'm a professor of emergency medicine and public health sciences at the University of Virginia. I also see patients in the Virginia Department of Corrections, where I also teach students. And I also serve as the senior psychiatrist for the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit in Quantico.
Wow.
And how long have you been the senior psychiatrist for the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, or BAU?
Since 1996.
And are there other psychiatrists who contract with the FBI for that department?
Yeah.
Well, certainly for the FBI writ large, there are psychiatrists who work with them. But as for the Behavioral Analysis Unit at Quantico, we sometimes have Walter Reed fellows who are psychiatrists. But other than that, I am the psychiatrist for the Behavioral Analysis Unit.
And what does that entail?
It entails working with the behavioral analysis units on crimes and concerns. Whether it is with children, I'm occasionally asked to consult with the Behavioral Analysis Unit relating to children, crimes against children, also crimes against adults, and also national security issues, and in particular, issues relating to threat assessment.
And are you, or do you consider yourself a forensic psychologist?
Psychiatrist, yes.
Sorry, I apologize. And what is the role of a forensic psychiatrist?
Well, a forensic psychiatrist examines issues with mental illness, and it's really the interface of mental illness and the law. Sometimes that can involve criminality. Most often, forensic psychiatrists are engaged in assessing mental status at the time of an offense or competency, but also forensic psychiatrists can consult institutions or also treat patients within facilities such as jails and prisons.
So that work that you do.
All right, just a quick little pause here. I just want to comment here. That's impressive that he works for the Bureau of Prisons, BOP. I applied to BOP for their doctoral psychology internship or training program. But that was for psychologists, not a psychiatrist. So he's like actually an MD. It sounds like he treats people within the prison system, but something that I've noticed within the prison systems is the people that treat the offenders tend to have a very like biased view about what the offenders are reporting and why they might be like, and we'll see that come up here. Also, the difference between, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, the difference between a forensic psychiatrist, which is what he is, which is a medical doctor, and then a psychologist, a forensic psychologist, which is not a medical doctor. It is a doctoral level clinical forensic psychologist. And what psychologists do and what they're able to do, and the reason why one might be a psychologist, because it's different from psychiatry, because psychiatry are the people that actually treat with medications someone with mental illness, and psychologists can treat with therapy, and are trained in different types of therapy for different disorders. And they're also trained to be able to diagnose psychiatric conditions or psychological conditions and evaluate. So they mostly, when it's needed for a legal purpose, like child protective services or for a custody dispute, or wanting to find out if an offender was not guilty by reason of insanity at the time of their crime, or trying to evaluate them for competency to see if they are like aware enough to be able to move forward in a fair way with the legal proceedings related to their arrest and stuff. And that's all separate from a therapist, which is a master's level clinician. Sometimes, well, yeah, if they're a therapist and they're like, you know, providing individual therapy, they will have a license for providing therapy. And you can either be a licensed counselor or a licensed social worker and provide independent therapy, which psychologists can provide therapy also, but then they can also provide psych evaluations and actually diagnose and give legal recommendations, but they cannot provide medication management or medication treatment. So that's why you would have like a care team. And a lot of times psychiatrists do not overlap very well with psychologists. I've noticed they don't cohesively work super well together, and they definitely seem to have way different means of assessing, which I think is interesting. So anyways, just to clarify that, because I do think a lot of people end up getting confused and they're like, wait, do they like give meds, or is this a psychiatrist? So just, yeah, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor that is prescribing medication. And before they start prescribing any medication, they need to diagnose for their like treatment records. But then psychologists can like complete actual like psych evaluations, and those are more extensive for legal reasons, and then they can provide treatment. And then you've got like therapists that are also providing treatment, but they're not like a psychologist. And I have experience doing forensic psychology evaluations, so I wouldn't have trained underneath him since he's a shrink, like a psych doctor, but I was like the same as the other expert like witnesses that I'm going to review that were able to evaluate and provide a clear like diagnostic impression of Lindsay in the case. And I have experience doing tons of batteries of assessments, so I can provide insight into all the different tests that they give or ways that they might be interpreting different like assessment results. So I know like all about the MMPI and how to test malingering, and picking out like other assessments that can help inform certain specifiers on certain disorders and blah 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 blah. So I feel like I like have done evaluations exactly like this before, not for, well, I'll get into that when we get into that. But so I just want to put that out there, that that is who he is. But it sounds like he sounds more of like someone who is a like research doctor. It sounds like he does provide like clinical care to some of the patients in BOP, or the Bureau of Prisons, but it seems like he's more focused on like theory and research, not so much clinical work. So yeah.
as a forensic psychiatrist, is that in addition to working with the behavioral analysis unit at the FBI and working at UVA and teaching and your work in the Bureau of Prisons?
Yes.
And in terms of your work as a forensic psychiatrist, have you done evaluations and testified on behalf of both prosecution and defense as a forensic psychiatrist?
Yes.
Approximately how many times have you testified in courts as a forensic psychiatrist?
Maybe 40 to 45 times, something like that.
And are you board certified in forensic psychiatry?
No.
And why not?
Well, when I finished my residency, I was interested in public psychiatry. And so I also was in the military. And so military psychiatry and public psychiatry in a teaching hospital was very important to me. As time went on, I was consulted by the FBI. They wanted to meet with me based upon a paper that I had published. And by the time I was more heavily involved in forensic psychiatry and particular assessment of individuals, by that point, the way to be board certified within forensic psychiatry would require a one-year fellowship. And at that point in my life, I just did not have the time to be able to devote to a one-year fellowship in addition to the other things that I was doing.
So instead of the one-year fellowship, did you have more on-the-job training as a forensic psychiatrist?
Yes.
And as a forensic psychiatrist, have you evaluated subjects for things like competency and criminal responsibility?
Yes, I have. And let me just say also, in addition to on-the-job experience, it's important to get teaching and training. And so I've taken advantage of courses within the Institute for Law, Psychiatry, and Public Policy at the University of Virginia and other opportunities as well in terms of even taking a board review course that was very helpful and quite comprehensive.
Okay. All right. I definitely have a problem with that, to be honest. I mean, I think this is going to be important to remember as we move along with his testimony, but he is not board certified to be a forensic evaluator. And that makes a big difference, you know, like it's definitely important to have the board behind your back when you're trying to testify. And here he's saying he's not board certified to be an expert testifying person. And the reason why is kind of what I just explained is, like, you know, forensic psychologists are able to complete these evaluations. And it sounds like in psychiatry, in order to be able to also have received enough training and knowledge and information and experience working underneath a supervisor, completing these types of evaluations, he'd never completed. So that's not good. A year when you're specifically working on just this one thing and you're being trained on how to evaluate and what to look for specifically, and he doesn't have it and he's an expert testifying witness, like, that seems a little, like, not great to me. I'm like, you know what I mean?
You've had other training other than the fellowship in order to be a forensic psychiatrist.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about the work that you've done with inmates?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Can you talk a little bit about the work that you've done for the Bureau of Prisons with inmates?
Yes. Well, specifically, most of my work has been with the Virginia Department of Corrections rather than the Bureau of Prisons. And since 1992, I guess, maybe 34 years, I have assessed and treated patients within the prison system, both men and women at men and women's facilities. And in that time, I have brought medical students and residents and fellows and taught them. So over the course of my career thus far, I've brought more than 2,500 medical students and residents into the prison system to learn about psychiatry and significant mental illness.
2,500?
And in the course
Jesus.
of your evaluating and treating female inmates, did you have the opportunity to evaluate and treat female inmates who had killed their children?
Yes.
And how often was that would occur, that you would treat that type?
I just want to say too that, you know, it sounds like even though he was, you know, affiliated with BOP, he actually, it sounds like, did most of his clinical work within the Department of Corrections. And that is where I also have my experience within forensics for the most part. I do have, like, experience, like, with evaluations that a private forensic psychologist completes, but I also have a bunch of experience completing evaluations within prison systems. And that was, I spent 3 years doing Psych evals, like psychosexual evaluations, neurocognitive evaluations, and just general psych evaluations within 3 different Department of Correction facilities in Minnesota. So that is where I have the majority of my experience too, not to brag about myself, but just to give you guys like a little bit of like information about, you know, similarities between him and I guess.
Type of patient.
Well, in consulting to a maximum security women's prison, I would say 5 to 7 women who had killed their children.
And in terms of your interactions with them, you said that you evaluated them. Did that involve diagnosing them?
Correct.
And then what did the treatment involve?
Treatment involved working with a team within the system. Prisons have psychologists and social workers and those who are responsible for working with patient inmates. Medication treatment is very important, but also there are important therapeutic aspects. For a number of years, I ran a group in prison. I felt that that was important, and my students felt that that was important as well.
I'm sorry, but that's a fucking lie. Okay, like that's a joke. There is like pretty much zero medication management in prison. They are always trying to like not give them meds because they always think that they are like selling them or trying to like overdose, or they are very, very like specific about who they decide to give medications to, which to me, I don't think is great. I'm like, why are we, if these people need medications and it's like helping them with psychotic thoughts and helping them not be as criminally, you know, inclined, like why would that be a bad thing? Do you know what I mean? Like I actually experienced that a lot at the DOC, where it was like concerning that I was seeing some of the treatment that was being given or evaluations that were done on certain offenders. And I'm like, no, we do not want to send this person back into the community without a diagnosis and having been treated for a while with medication to not have him having psychosis where he like literally is like R-wording people. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a huge overlap between, you know, mental health care and prisons, but they have zero providers. And it's crazy. Like our prison systems are like the biggest mental health providers in our country, but there are no mental health providers there. Like when okay, so like I said, I worked at 3 different Department of Corrections in Minnesota, okay? And so within each of those prisons, there was never one set psychiatrist for that prison. Okay, so this is like in the Department of Corrections in Minnesota, the entire Department of Corrections, that's like probably close to like 10 facilities where they provide medication management for people if needed. And there might be a total of 4 or 5 psychiatrists that provide medication management. So that means that they are traveling around everywhere, all to different facilities throughout the week. So there's not one set psychiatrist within a prison. Like they have to share it across multiple prisons with one psychiatrist. Then there's usually one doctoral level, like clinical psychologist, who is the person that will complete psych evaluations and basically be the gateway person to decide whether or not this person should be referred on to psychiatry for medication management. And they're the ones that are kind of like gatekeeping and being like, you're lying, you aren't psychotic, like this is what I think about you. But since it's like within a prison setting, they're trained to basically like not believe offenders. Like, you know, they always say like everyone in prison is innocent, you know what I mean? But, and again, I feel like they think that they're very medication seeking and seem to be extremely worried about that. I just want to put that out there that like, you know, in prisons where there was like 2,000 inmates where I was doing evaluations, there was one psychologist that could complete psych evaluations throughout all of the 2,000 offenders. There was like 0.5 psychiatrists that were able to provide care. And then there was about 6 licensed therapists that could actually provide treatment, like clinical treatment. So if that tells you anything about how limited the care that offenders receive in Department of Correction facilities is, like, that should tell you that. So this, I feel like that doesn't ring.
And in terms of the group you ran, what type of group was that?
It was a therapy group in which individuals were brought together, all who were diagnosed with a significant mental illness, and being able to speak about their experience and also how to deal with issues, or how they dealt with issues over and above the medications that they were receiving.
And in your experience in the Department of Correction at the Bureau of Prisons, treating these patients, and also in your experience working at the FBI, did you encounter individuals who suffered from psychosis?
Yes, very much so.
And could you estimate how many patients you have treated who suffered from psychosis?
I'm going to object at this point.
No, overall.
Thousands. I spent 15 years running an inpatient admissions unit in a teaching state hospital. And so,
Sure.
Doctor, you were about to describe a hospital that you had previously worked at, is that correct?
yes,
And where was that, and what type of hospital?
it was a state hospital in Virginia, near Charlottesville, Virginia, where the University of Virginia is. It was a teaching hospital with medical students and residents, and was a facility that dealt with some of the most severely mentally ill individuals who would have been committed to the hospital.
And how long were you at that hospital in that role?
15 years.
And during that time frame, is that when you saw the thousands of patients that you treated with psychosis?
I saw them there, yes, but also within the prison system. And of course, during training, during my residency.
Have you ever written any articles about postpartum psychosis?
I'm sorry, I don't want to like keep talking about myself. So sorry if that's annoying, but I just want to like add in there that I also have experience providing extensive long-term care to severe mental illness, people with severe mental illness, pretty much so basically I worked for 10 years in a position where I provided short-term and long-term treatment to people with psychosis, and some of those people were committed to the state and had been found not guilty for reason of insanity, and some of them also just were, had schizophrenia and needed help receiving treatment. This was like in a residential facility. And so I was able to, and it had 200 beds. So over the span of 10 years, I saw probably close to 1,000 different clients that presented with psychosis as well. And I think that is something that a lot of people don't have much experience working with or evaluating or assessing, is psychosis, because it can be pretty it's not super, it's like a severe mental illness, and there's not like huge rates of people that have it, but definitely enough where it's important that they receive adequate treatment and people know what to treat. And I feel like I got a really, really good feeling and understanding behind the different ways that hallucinating and psychosis and delusions present themselves, and also like how clients also are able to, I guess, convey those experiences and what helps for treatment, and how to basically provide just support for maintaining a good level of coping for the psychotic disorder that they have. So just, yeah.
Psychosis.
Yes.
And when was that?
We published an article in 1987 relating to 2 cases of postpartum psychosis that I actually saw when I was an intern. One was my patient, and one was one that I consulted on.
And that article that you wrote, was that entitled Postpartum Psychosis Induced by Bromocriptine?
Yes.
What was bromocriptine?
So bromocriptine at that time was a medication that was used to inhibit or to stop lactation. Some women would, after birth, make a decision for whatever reason that they were not able to breastfeed. And so in those days, this medication, bromocriptine, was used to inhibit lactation.
And in your treatment of one patient and what you learned of the second patient, did you come to a conclusion that bromocriptine was having some effect of inducing postpartum psychosis?
Yes.
And is that what you wrote the article about?
Yes.
And eventually, after you wrote this article, were there other studies that cited to your article?
Yes. And let me just emphasize, I was one of 5 authors of that article.
And eventually, was bromocriptine, did people stop using that to stop lactation in women?
Yes. The FDA took it off the market, I believe, in 1994 or 1995. Not just for the reason of postpartum psychosis, but also for other problems, cardiac problems and the rest that bromocriptine sometimes caused in people.
And to your knowledge, was your article with the other co-authors the first article that brought to scientific attention this issue with bromocriptine and postpartum psychosis?
I'm sorry, can you ask that question again?
Sure. To your knowledge, was this article that you wrote with others the first article that brought to scientific attention the possible link between bromocriptine and postpartum psychosis?
That's my understanding. There were a few letters to journals commenting about bromocriptine and a connection, but I think the first article that was written was ours that we wrote about the two women who suffered postpartum psychosis.
Now, you've mentioned your experience in diagnosing and treating psychosis. What is psychosis?
Well, psychosis is, it can take
All right, so I also just want to add here, that sounds really impressive that he authored an article, but I just want to point out that it was in 1987, which is like ancient. You know what I mean? Like anytime that I see papers and articles that are written like scientific stuff and it's like published in the 80s, I'm like, like I can't really use this study because it's not updated enough, like for clinical work for sure. And also he was one of 5 authors. Like I have also authored multiple articles, and there's some, like, not gonna lie, that yeah, you do in a group and maybe you were there for like a little bit of it, or you wrote like one section of it and you're able to be put as an author, but that does not mean that you like wrote that entire article by any means. So the fact that he was one of 5 authors of that is like a little bit like, okay. And then also the fact that this article was written on 2 individual cases, to me, like just basically means it's insignificant. I mean, that is not an appropriate, you can't make any statistically significant conclusions from any type of research that you're doing with a like N of 2, you know what I mean? Or like the population of 2. So just want to say that.
Reforms. I think we most often think about people who are psychotic as having hallucinations. And so we call those perceptual disturbances. That is oftentimes auditory hallucinations, so people hearing voices or sounds, but they also can be other types of hallucinations as well, not as common in psychosis, such as visual hallucinations, or even what we call tactile hallucinations, where the sense of touch is affected, or olfactory hallucinations. Most commonly, it is auditory hallucinations, though, if we're talking about those perceptual disturbances. Now, there are other areas that psychosis can show itself. Delusions are fixed false beliefs. They can be bizarre or non-bizarre. And sometimes people who have auditory hallucinations also have delusions. Sometimes you can have psychosis, or someone can be psychotic with just a delusion and no perceptual disturbance, no type of hallucination. And the third area is with regard to thought and how people communicate.
Yes.
So in that part of psychosis, when it demonstrates itself, is that people have a great difficulty communicating with even speech disorganization. They may engage in what we call neologisms, or making up words that have a specific meaning for them, but no one else. And the way that thought is translated either in writing or in speech, oftentimes people who are psychotic and also have a difficult time with stringing their words together. So what we would call looseness of associations. So really, there are 3 arenas that psychosis can show itself, maybe in all 3, the perceptual disturbances, the delusions, but also the thought and related to thought and communication. But it's also possible to be psychotic and have just one of those 3 elements
And is psychosis?
Okay, that is super important. And that is definitely something that I kept thinking about when I was hearing all these arguments about whether or not she heard these commanding voices and whether or not like it was normal for her to have experienced auditory hallucinations, and that so many people just thought that she was not experiencing psychosis because she did not like, they didn't believe her reporting of hearing these auditory hallucinations. But I'm like, you don't need to have hallucinations in order to be diagnosed with psychosis. And I think that that's really important. And I think, you know, so delusions is one, and delusions are pretty interesting and kind of hard sometimes to be able to distinguish between like maybe a normal like obsession type deal, or if you're someone that's like actually delusional. And like, you can be delusional about things that could actually happen, you know what I mean? So that's kind of hard too to differentiate. But anyways, and the part that he just talked about, like disorganized thought and distorted thinking, I feel like that was the number one symptom from what I have been hearing from the reports about Lindsay Clancy and what she was, I guess, displaying or presenting with. And I think she 100% matches psychosis criteria for, you know, for DSM diagnosis. So I feel like I'm glad that he said that, because that hopefully they remember that in the jury.
Its own mental illness or a symptom of mental illness?
Psychosis is a symptom.
And why is it a symptom of mental illness and not its own defined mental illness?
Well, because there are many different possible causes of psychosis. Someone who has a serious medical problem, for example, can actually become psychotic. A brain tumor is one example in which those
that happened to my
symptoms of
friend's
psychosis
mom. That was
show
crazy.
themselves.
She was like,
but there are other ways that people
hallucinating.
can experience psychosis. Some can be secondary to, say, drug abuse. There's certain drugs like cocaine or amphetamines or bath salts that can cause people to have the kind of perceptual disturbances or delusions or problems with communicating, you know, that I talked about. So really, I think it's just important to know that that it is not a cause. It is it represents a significant finding or presentation. Schizophrenia is one diagnosis where we will see psychosis in a number of forms, but also someone who has a serious mood disorder or schizoaffective disorder or a brief psychosis. So there are many different roads that can lead to psychosis. And so it's important to find out what's originating, because that's how we make the best decisions about how to treat any psychotic symptoms that we're seeing.
And doctor, the signs and symptoms of psychosis that are present, is that dependent on the underlying cause, the mental illness or whatever is causing the psychosis?
What?
Yes. When you say dependent, it just is clearly something that is a result of or a manifestation of the illness. For example, there are many different things that can cause a fever, right? And so while a fever is a symptom, it's a presentation that's very significant and can be very significant. What we need to do in medicine and psychiatry is find out, well, what is the cause? Because that is what's going to lead to the most appropriate treatment.
So for example, an analogy would be a bacterial infection can cause a fever. Bipolar disorder can cause psychosis.
Correct.
Now, you mentioned earlier serious mental illness. What is considered to be a serious mental illness?
Well, serious mental illnesses affect a small portion of the population, a smaller portion, maybe 4%. So people who have schizophrenia have a serious mental illness. People who have bipolar 1, which is manic depressive illness, that is a serious mental illness. Schizoaffective disorder is also a serious mental illness. So while many people can have symptoms of mental illness and can benefit from treatment, either psychotherapy or medication or some kind of combination, there are some that are just really, really profound. And that's a much smaller percentage.
And so serious mental illness, is that sometimes shortened to SMI?
Yes.
Now, is there something called any mental illness, AMI?
Yes.
And what would be in that category of any mental illness?
So any mental illness would be certainly adjustment disorders or anxiety disorders, mild depression, depression without psychotic features, for example. PTSD, which can have significant symptoms, is also something that would go under the category of any mental illness.
Even with like flashbacks.
Now, were you asked to do a forensic evaluation of Lindsay Clancy?
Yes,
And you were asked to do that by the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office, correct?
correct.
And did you receive direct payment from the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office for your evaluation?
No.
How did that payment plan, how did that work between the DA's office and your services?
So I do my work in testimony and the like through the University of Virginia. So my department is the recipient of any funds that come from the work that I do. I get a salary from the university that is not dependent on the number of cases that I am involved with or whatever. So I don't receive payment myself. I see it as part of my job as a professor.
And in terms of your work with the university, does the university have any impact or influence on what your evaluation is or what your conclusions are?
No, not at all.
He kind of looks like a bald eagle.
For your review of Lindsay Clancy, what types of records and other materials did you review?
Well, they were extensive. They involved significant medical records, not just the psychiatric records, outpatient, inpatient, but also medical records. Certainly the hospital records from McLean, the hospital records from Tewksbury, but also emergency department visits at South Shore and Mass General Hospital. So a significant body of medical and mental health records, both inpatient and outpatient. But in addition, there was a substantial amount of grand jury materials that I reviewed, and videos. For example, videos not only of interviews of individuals, but also in January when the Clancy family went to the museum, where they went to the Cape Codder water park. Was able to review those kinds of videos as well. I also received the reports from both the government, but also the defense. And so those experts who were retained, I had an opportunity to review those. I mean, the list of materials is very significant. CVS records, for example, pharmacy records, and law enforcement records, for example, the police reports and things like that from that day, 24 January 2023, in which the event occurred.
Yeah, when you're
completing. Doctor, is it typical for you to have such a breadth of records and information, both pre-killing and post-killing, when you do a forensic evaluation?
I would think so.
No, I wouldn't say that's typical. Certainly for any evaluation, it's important to try and obtain as much information as possible. But in this case, I think the amount of information was truly significant.
Okay, so
and you also interviewed the defendant, correct?
Yes, I did.
And how many times did you interview her, and for how long?
I interviewed Ms. Clancy on 2 occasions. One was on the 29th of May of this year, and the other was the 4th of June. I believe on the 29th of May, I interviewed her for approximately 6.5 hours. And then the second time in June 4th, it was about 5 hours.
Weird.
And were those interviews in person or on Zoom?
They were by way of Zoom.
And why were they by way of Zoom?
That's weird.
For personal reasons, I was unable to travel at that time. And so I requested the ability to have an interview by way of a Zoom video platform.
They shouldn't allow evaluation
that was
done
approved
through Zoom.
And did you find that doing the interviews by Zoom inhibited your ability to evaluate Ms. Clancy in any way?
No.
Well, I think there are always limitations when one is not physically present. When one is seeing someone in a video setting, sometimes it takes longer to be able to get information and establish rapport.
Conceptualization.
Other limitations are just having an opportunity to see the environment, that the individual is in. I have done evaluations in the past using a Zoom format. There are certainly advantages to being in person.
Did you, in your interviews with Ms. Clancy, have any difficulties having her answer questions or establishing a rapport with her?
No, she was very pleasant, very responsive to questions that I asked on both occasions.
Were there any benefits to doing the interviews on Zoom?
Yeah, because she's been treated for 3 years.
Well, one benefit that one doesn't always have with an in-person evaluation is that a platform like this can also save the entire interview, and both video of the interviewer, myself, but also Ms. Clancy. So if someone wants to really understand the interview and how it went, you not only have a transcript, but you have a video that really demonstrates the course of the interview, how it went. And that can be very helpful. That can be more helpful than if, as a clinician or as an assessor, I am writing notes. Because when you're writing notes, sometimes it's harder to be able to attend to the individual. So certainly, being able to have a transcript of the interview is helpful, and I think it makes the process more transparent as well, which I think is a positive.
Dude, you can do that face to face.
As part of your evaluation in this case, did you also interview what's known as collaterals, or other people who knew the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Who did you interview?
Well, I interviewed Patrick Clancy, also on a Zoom platform.
And after you had reviewed all of the records that were provided to you, and the criminal file and all the evidence that was provided to you, and conducted these interviews both with Ms. Clancy and Patrick Clancy, were you able to conduct an analysis of all of that material in order to come to your eventual conclusions?
Yeah.
Yes.
And if we could just go through your analysis of this case, and if we could start with, I think what you called in your report, Ms. Clancy's characterization of the command auditory hallucinations.
Yes. So Ms. Clancy stated to me and some other evaluators that her hallucination, that of an external voice, something coming from outside of her head, occurred when she was standing at the refrigerator. She said that she was in the process of making her children their dinner when she received a call from Patrick Clancy, returned the call, and then as soon as she finished the call with Patrick Clancy, she said that is when she heard the voice. This is your last chance. You have to kill your kids and then kill yourself.
Okay, so I just want to say real quick, he mentioned it was outside of herself, and she heard it from outside. So I just told you guys how much experience, and I guess I have a pretty big breadth of knowledge behind different ways that psychosis presents itself. And this sounds bad, but I've never really questioned whether or not, if someone's hearing a voice, if it's from inside their head or outside their head. I don't even see why that differentiation makes a difference. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit different of a type of hallucination, but either way, you're hearing a voice that's not yours, whether or not you hear it in your head or not. It's you're still hearing a voice that's not yours, commanding you to do stuff. You know what I mean? So I don't know why that would matter.
And so that was what she told a number of us. There are also other accounts that she made to individuals that were quite a bit different. To Dr. Spinelli, for example, she said that the voice happened at 5:10 or 5:15 p.m. as soon as Patrick Clancy left on his errands, and that the voice, she described the voice to Dr. Spinelli as increasing in intensity, but saying, "This is your last chance. You have to kill your kids before you kill yourself." But also that it was that her children would suffer if she did not do that. When I asked her about the voice that she heard, again, she said that it started really right after the telephone call at 5:34 with her husband, Patrick. And she said it was a man's voice. It was very clear. It was external. In other words, it came from outside of her head. That it was constant. So this phrase, "This is your last chance. You have to kill your kids and then kill yourself," was something that was repeated over and over and over and over again during that period that she strangled her children. And then just as soon as it had started, it stopped at when she had finished killing the children, strangling the children.
Doctor, was there anything about what she reported to you about the voice that was significant to you in your evaluation, and if so, why?
Okay, sorry, again, I also want to make a comment there. I think in my opinion, he is understanding these criteria and I guess descriptions of symptoms as like way too literal. I think like he already described that psychosis comes with thought disorder, which is someone has a very disorganized way of thinking and communicating, and even being able to truly understand what they're experiencing, let alone being able to describe it to someone else. So here he's talking about what she reported to a psychiatrist or psychologist that evaluated her, after the offense happened. And then he's saying, like, we don't know when. I'm assuming it was like, sooner to like when it took place than what he did, which was he just evaluated her. He evaluated her over 3 years later. You know what I mean? And so I'm sure now she's been treated for 3 years and she's had a lot of time and a lot of information come to her about all of these things that were happening and had a ton of time to think about it. And she is actually being treated for the mental health issue that, of course, she'd probably have differing accounts between those two people. And I don't think that should be significant. You know what I mean? I think that actually makes sense. It would be weird if there wasn't some differences there. You know what I mean?
Well, what was significant to me is that she had not spoken about hearing voices before that in any of the mental health professionals, the psychiatrists, the nurse practitioners, the physicians and staff in the emergency departments or at McLean. And so this was the first time that she reported that was documented, but also that she experienced an auditory hallucination, according to what she told me. So that was unusual. And then also what was very unusual was the fact that the voice stopped with the death or the strangling of her youngest son, Callan, and that she went upstairs and then proceeded to engage in behavior in an effort to kill herself, but that the voice had stopped as soon as she had strangled her last Callan, her youngest child.
I could stop you there for a moment and ask you, you said that it's unusual that this was the first time that she had heard this voice. Why is that unusual?
Well, she had certainly suffered with symptoms of mental illness, depression and anxiety, most specifically. Anxiety that she had reported to Dr. Tufts in mid-September. And then certainly the symptoms that later on included suicidal ideation and also what she said were dark or intrusive thoughts to harm her children that she mentioned to her husband and her mother.
Oh, okay.
I think 2 occasions.
Okay.
And Doctor, you also mentioned that
So then just because she wasn't that's the other thing with a lot of psychosis is you're paranoid and and she also has a good reason to be paranoid when wanting, think of how scary that would be to be all of a sudden just out of nowhere starting to have these psychotic thoughts that are really troubling you. And you're like, what the hell? I know that this is psychosis that's coming on from something, but being able, when you're so, I guess, just disorganized and such brain fog, it's hard for someone to be able to detach from those thoughts. You know what I mean? And that's why it's untreated mental illness. And that's why when you have untreated mental illness, it can result in really extreme things like this happening. And so I think unfortunately she was unable to really be able to express or feel comfortable truly expressing what she was hearing and what she was experiencing to these doctors. And when you actually see the type of treatment that she was receiving throughout these 4 months, no one took the time to actually build rapport with her, to have a very I would say therapeutic and trusting relationship with each other, which is the point of a therapist. And it makes sense that she had disclosed that she had thoughts of hurting the children and suicidal thoughts when she talked to her husband and her mom, the 2 people that she's probably closest to in her life. And these 2, especially Patrick, is not trained, and the mom's not really trained either in psychological evaluation. So when she's telling them, I am concerned that I'm having dark intrusive thoughts, I can't sleep, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm worried, like I'm wanting to off myself, and I've also had thoughts of hurting the children, like they're not going to be like, okay, can you really break this down to me? Like, can you really tell me what is making you feel that way? Why do you want to hurt the kids? You know, and like maybe if they were psychological evaluators, they would know to be like, well, can you please explain how you experienced that? Were you hearing a voice? Was it just a feeling? Like, was it a thought that came from your own mind? Like, you know that as a psychological evaluator, like the questions to ask, you know? But if you're just like a layperson, like her mom and husband, it would make sense that they wouldn't get that specific information. Plus, that's not documented. Like, they're not documenting and writing reports on all of their interactions with her, like, because it's just everyday life. So I think it totally makes sense. And I think that if people had been a little bit more perceptive and really looked at the records and what she was reporting and seeking out for treatment, they would have seen here that she was experiencing like really severe mental health issues, and she was reaching out for help, which a lot of people don't even do. Like, she was actually being like, hey, something's going on, I want to get help for this, like, which a lot of people, when they are that disorganized or not being treated, they don't even think of that. They're like, I'm just psychotic and doing my own thing, you know what I mean? So, and a lot of people are paranoid about medication too, and that goes along with psychotic thought and delusions too. And I don't think she was necessarily delusional about her medications. I think she might have been, but I think the medications were probably affecting her level of symptoms. But I also feel like she probably also had some delusional or paranoid beliefs around medications. It sounded like she was kind of perseverating around different meds when she was receiving the care, but I think that was just showing up as a symptom of her psychosis, you know?
It was unusual that the voice stopped after Callan was killed. Why is that unusual?
Well, I've worked with, compared to other patients that I've treated who have had command auditory hallucinations.
I don't object to that. You want the same objection raised before? Kelsey, I see it.
Ooh,
Doctor,
like
based on
that.
your training and experience in dealing with diagnosing and treating people who have psychosis, and what you've learned in all your training and schooling, is it typical for someone in psychosis to hear a voice only one time, never before, never after?
No.
And again, based on your training experience, is it typical for someone in psychosis to hear a voice that's constant rather than intermittent?
No, that is not typical.
And what does it mean, the difference between a constant voice and an intermittent voice?
Well, an intermittent voice would come and go. It wouldn't necessarily just keep playing over and over again as if it were on a tape, which Ms. Clancy told me that it was a voice. It's the same thing in the same tone, repeated over and over and over until she had strangled Callan.
And is it typical, based on your training and experience, for someone to hear command hallucinations and then for them to stop abruptly?
No. Committing the act is not curative of the voice. I've not ever seen that.
And
He's taking this so literal, and it's like a little disappointing. It's like people are getting hung up on these tiny details that really do not matter at all. Like, if anyone has, you know, a reason why these differences should matter, like, I guess we know that she wasn't a good historian and a good reporter. A lot of times when people experience psychosis, they have like parts that they don't even remember, or they don't even really know if that happened or not. Like, sometimes it's almost like, and I think, you know, part of the psychosis is these feelings and delusions. It's just like, you're not having a hallucination, like necessarily a voice, but it's like, you know, that like your children, or something bad's going to happen to them. You just know inside that this is going to happen to them unless you do something. And, you know, that is delusional. And, you know, I just wonder if when these people were questioning her for all these different evaluations, if she knew that she needed to be so exact in terms of what it sounded like. And I mean, and again, like, do we really trust someone who is psychotic to be a good reporter of their experiences when they were untreated and psychotic? Like, I just don't think that that's like a very fair evaluative, I guess, method to determine whether or not she really was experiencing voices. But again, even if she, I don't know, I just do wonder. He's like, it's so rare. It's like, well, how often are you asking this detailed of information to psychotic people about their experiences? Like, unless they're going through a trial like this, I don't really think a psychiatrist or like a psychologist is really going to get them to really break down exactly their experiences. It's like, no, we just know that you're feeling like you want to off your children and you're getting paranoid and you're not sleeping at all and you're depressed as fuck. You want to kill yourself. Like, to me, we know enough, like, you know, and so I guess, yeah.
Doctor, based on your training experience, someone in psychosis hearing a voice without accompanying delusions, is that typical?
That would be pretty rare. It's absolutely not typical.
And in talking to me,
but she was experiencing delusions. She was definitely delusional. Like, she thought that she needed to kill her kids in order for them to be safe and that she needed to kill herself. That's fucking delusional. You know, it doesn't matter if there's a voice telling her about it. She was still fucking delusional. You know, like, I don't see why he's saying that she wasn't delusional. And I don't think he knows enough information about what she was reporting and what her experiences were leading up to that point either. Like, I really would love to read his psych eval.
Ms. Clancy, did you speak to her about the concerns she had that if she had voiced thoughts of harming her children to providers, medical providers, that her children would have been taken away?
Yes.
And did you see that as a delusional thought?
No. Certainly with the requirements that healthcare professionals have to report any issues that could cause harm to children, for example, as required reporters, it's very rational for her to be concerned that by voicing her thoughts of harm could cause her children, certainly an assessment and a rapid assessment and a determination about how best to keep the children safe. So I didn't see that as irrational, but rather rational.
I think she was just totally freaked out and was like, oh my fucking God, what the hell is going on with me? And I'm hearing really crazy shit in my head and thinking really crazy things. It would be super scary. It would also feel, I think you would have to be really vulnerable to be able to like open up and tell people that. Like, how fucked up is it to have to tell someone like, oh my God, I kind of want to kill myself and I'm like hearing shit, you know, like people would be like, holy shit, you're going crazy. And it's like, yeah, you are. So like, I think the fact that she again was disclosing to the people closest to her the most severe symptoms makes sense. And a lot of time, again, psychosis comes with paranoia. And so she probably did have an increase of paranoia, like around thinking that people were hearing what she was thinking or like understanding that she was experiencing these things. You know, that to me seems delusional and paranoid, you know?
Just understanding the healthcare system.
And when reviewing the records and speaking to Ms. Clancy, did you see or notice any delusional statements or beliefs surrounding the hearing of that voice on the 24th?
No, I didn't.
Now, based on your training experience, is it typical?
You don't think that a delusion was that she had to kill her kids in order for them to be safe? What the hell? What is it? That's a stupid determination. That does not make sense to me.
For someone in psychosis to hear a voice and immediately act on it?
No.
And why is that?
I'd like to have it over hearing at this point, Judge, unless this is, I'd like to test his qualifications.
I'm going to, same objection, same ruling.
So your opinion is it's not typical, correct?
Yeah, like
Correct.
what is his, how does he know, does he know stats? This is just from his personal, like,
Now you mentioned the
same thing with his research of 2 people in 1987. Like, bitch, that is not an expertise for you. You don't actually know this information. You're just assuming it, but it's actually not true. If you look at the actual research, it doesn't go along with what you're fucking describing. Like, it's ridiculous that these people can go up on the stand, call themselves an expert witness, that they're not even board certified, and then go off and fucking just, it's all these old men. And like, honestly, like, I left the field of psychology and clinical work specifically because of people like him. It's like so much of psychology is just kind of like people that don't really know what the hell is going on, but like love to philosophize things and try to make up information that can support themselves as evidence, like, you know, personality assessments or whatever, but none of it is like super reliable, and they often get it wrong, and there's no way to like actually prove this stuff. And yet they carry themselves like in such a manner that it's like, yeah, of course they're right. There's like no way that this person is actually telling the truth, you know, because this is what I know. Like, they are not good providers. They're not listening to what the patient is reporting to them. They don't actually try to get to know them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like, so yeah, that is a huge reason why I ended up leaving clinical psych and doing psych evals, because I just thought it was, yeah, like really unfortunate that these people try to give themselves the like air that they do. It's so silly, really. But okay, get off my soapbox there for now, but I will probably return to those similar thoughts like that in future.
The defendant told you that when she received the call from her husband at 5:33 and called him back at 5:34, that she was getting dinner ready for her children, correct?
Yes.
And did she tell you what she was about to get out of the refrigerator?
Yes. She said she was at the refrigerator and that the refrigerator door was open and that she was getting chicken nuggets out of the refrigerator section for her children.
Now, in your collateral interview with Patrick Clancy, did you learn from him that when he left the residence, the children were already eating chicken nuggets on the couch?
Yes.
And did Patrick Clancy tell you that Dawson in particular was eating chicken nuggets and green beans out of a bowl on the couch?
Yes, that's what he told me.
And is it fair to say that there are crime scene photographs showing a bowl on the couch?
Yes.
And so is there any significance to you in the defendant telling you that when she got the phone call from Patrick, when he's at CVS, that she's making chicken nuggets, versus Patrick telling you that that had already happened and the crime scene photo showing you the bowl was already on the couch?
That's so dumb.
Well, it's inconsistent.
And are inconsistencies...
Oh my God, who fucking cares? Why would that matter? She could have been like cooking more chicken nuggets if the kid was hungry or something. And also, who's to say that Patrick Clancy is like, you know, reporting accurately? Like, yeah, they found a bowl of chicken nuggets, but that's not to say that she still wasn't. And who cares if it was? I mean, it's just such a weird thing to really like note and make it seem like it should be significant. Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
Like that important in your evaluations in cases like this?
Yes.
And how so?
No.
Well, looking at someone's mental status at the time of an offense, it's important to understand what was going on in their mind at the time. And in this case, the widely divergent reports.
I just also want to mention, I cannot believe the pace of this fucking testimony. Like I said, I'm replaying it at 1.5 replay speed. So imagine having to fucking listen to this at like the normal speed. This guy, I mean, it's like, I almost want to, maybe I'm gonna like increase it to 1.75, because I'm like, he's taking too long to answer. Don't you think? Oh, I can't. Yeah, I can. Okay, we'll do that.
Lindsay Clancy versus her husband Patrick.
Too fast.
Raise questions
don't you think?
about.
Okay, sorry, too fast. Let's bring it back to. I'm gonna try that.
About what she is telling me and how things are happening. So certainly that's a cause for significant concern.
Why?
One of them is not correct in their statement.
What? So,
And in
oh my
terms
God.
of what you testified about earlier about the defendant
weird.
giving you one version of what the voice told her and giving Dr. Spinelli a different version of what the voice told her, is there any significance in your evaluation to that?
Yes.
And what is that?
Well, again, it's markedly inconsistent. Ms. Clancy was very clear with me about the time that the voice started, and that it was constant for a period of time until the children were killed, and then it stopped. And
what do you mean? That's what I need
according
to
to
know.
Dr.
Why
Spinelli's report, Ms. Clancy stated that the voice started much earlier, actually, when Patrick Clancy left.
Oh my God!
And so we're talking about a significant difference in time, and those two just they don't match. So it's hard to which version.
This is another reason why I fucking hate forensic clinical psychologists, and like why I really butted heads with them during my time doing forensic psych evals, because they go into it, especially ones that are, it's forensic and they're trying to make like an assessment of someone's guilt, they are trained to right away. It's like, instead of actually providing genuine, authentic care and like treatment to someone in like a way that you are really invested in their well-being and you want to be helping them, and like versus treating someone and going into it with them having to prove to you that what they're telling you is what they actually experienced. Like, imagine having to tell some psychologist who you're only going to meet twice, who has all these like, credentials behind his name. He has these interviews with you, doesn't tell you the significance of like your reporting, like not saying, can I ask you why you are reporting different things there? Because that makes me concerned that, you might be malingering or something, like, but then it would give her an opportunity to be like, no, like, definitely not, like, this is actually my experience, let me like help explain it to you, like, but that is definitely not the way that psychologists act, like in prisons. They like are right away just like, you're lying, and basically prove to me that you deserve treatment, which I'm like, shouldn't we be wanting to provide treatment to the offenders that are like actively violent and hurting people? Like, shouldn't we want to support them so when they do return to the community that they're like not still psychotic and having issues and like problems with their thoughts and sleep and regulating behaviors, you know what I mean?
Is the one that I should consider.
Now, further along in your analysis, you talk about Ms. Clancy's outward portrayals misleading her family and providers. What do you mean by that, and what did you see in the records in your interview of her?
Yes. Well, in looking back at her history, for example, with Patrick, she dated Patrick when she was in nursing school, and that was at a time that she was experiencing fairly significant anxiety, according to her, such that she went to a psychiatrist and was treated for her anxiety with Prozac and Wellbutrin, and also propranolol. And this was for a fairly significant period of time during their dating, approximately a year. And
during grad school,
when I spoke with Mr. Clancy, and also in other testimony and collateral information, he was completely unaware that she was experiencing mental health symptoms at that time that they were dating, or that she was taking medication. And
what the fuck?
And he said he did not learn that she had taken medication, mental health medication, Prozac, Wellbutrin. Those are both antidepressants, as well as propranolol, which helps with anxiety, particularly with the kind of presentations that she was doing. But he was unaware until during this time that she was having, great difficulty, November, December time period.
I mean, that is why you have like very well protected private information that cannot be shared with just random people of the public, because this is super personal. Your physical health and mental health, history and everything like that is your private information. You should not have to give that to anyone unless you feel 100% comfortable doing it and don't feel like you ever like owe someone that. I mean, yes, if you like want to get married to someone or something, if you're experiencing psychosis, you should probably be like, hey, I struggle with psychosis, but I don't know how you could date someone that was experiencing like ongoing psychosis and not realize something weird was going on. Like that probably suggests that you're really not that like in check in the relationship or like really paying attention to your partner. But anyways, I feel like just receiving treatment for some anxiety during grad school is not a big deal. And like there's no reason why she should automatically be like, oh my God, I have to tell Patrick, my boyfriend, that this happened to me or that this is happening to me. And like a lot of people are embarrassed about it. And she seems like someone who's like a little more reserved or shy. So I could see why if she liked a guy, she wouldn't want to automatically be like, by the way, I have mental health problems, you know? It's like, oh God.
2022?
Yes. But there are other.
But I know people say like, well, that's not fair. Like if you are married to someone, if you do have children with someone, like you definitely should be sharing that information. While I agree with you, I do feel like at the point that they were dating, they weren't married, they didn't have children together, and it was under control, and she hadn't experienced psychotic features or anything. Like she was just feeling anxious. Do you know what I mean?
Aspects too, where her portrayal misled others in terms of how she was doing.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yes.
Like
well, in the
underreported
numerous
symptoms.
text messages, which really varied. There were
like
times when
downplay it.
she stated that she was doing very well.
Yeah.
And for example, even in the days leading up to the 24th of January 2023, the photographs that she was sending on Instagram and the like really portrayed something very different than what she
shut up.
later stated was going on inside.
What the fuck? Did he really just say that? That is so ridiculous that he just testified to that. That's the stupidest comment I feel like I've ever heard. It's like everyone fucking knows that what people put on social media is never a true reflection of what the fuck is actually going on in their lives. That's why it's like so like, you know, I guess problematic mentally and for some people, because they're like, oh my God, everyone else around me is perfect. It's like, no one's fucking perfect, but they're not going to put that out on Facebook or tell every single person they start dating. You know what I mean? Like the fact that he just said that is ridiculous.
With regard to providers, Ms. Clancy told me that during this period that she was having such difficulty, and that was really starting in October. She started taking medication in October. Ms. Clancy told me that she was having real difficulty with some symptoms and anxiety and the like.
Okay. Did you ask her to expand?
Mother-in-law
listen to what
suggested to her that there was a doctor that she knew named Rose, told me that during this period that she was having such difficulty, and that was really
wait. So she told him
really
this?
too, where her portrayal misled others in terms of how she was doing.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yes. Well, in the numerous text messages, which really varied, there were times when she stated that she was doing very well. And for example, even in the days leading up to the 24th of January 2023, the photographs that she was sending on Instagram and the like really portrayed something very different than what she later stated was going on inside. With regard to providers, Ms. Clancy told me that during this period that she was having such difficulty, and that was really really starting in October.
What do you mean by that?
She started taking medication in October. Ms. Clancy told me that she was having real difficulty with some symptoms and anxiety and the like.
Did you ask her to expand on that and to go into the nitty-gritty details of criteria that she would meet in order for her to like continue treatment with you? Like what was his follow-up question with that? Like how can he say that she reported all of these like really, really dark, bad symptoms, but not ask her to expand on that? Like
her mother-in-law suggested to her that there was a doctor that she knew named Rose who was willing to talk with her just on an informal basis. And so as I understand, this doctor made time for her to be seen, not in an official way, not as in a doctor-patient relationship, but just to get an understanding about Ms. Clancy's problems. And that this doctor recommended Lamictal or lamotrigine as a medication that could be very helpful, with regard to the depression she was experiencing, the issues with mood and the like. And so in looking at Dr. Tuff's notes, there is a note, I believe, on December 1st of 2022, in which they discuss Lamictal as a real possible medication.
Okay.
And then by mid-December, it was really a very, very difficult time. The whole month of December, in many ways, was very difficult. But after this experience,
Yeah, we have a question.
So we've talked about the defendant seeing the provider named Rose and getting the recommendation for Lamictal, the defendant talking to Dr. Tufts about the Lamictal. Was there another provider that she talked to about Lamictal?
yes,
And who was that?
that was nurse practitioner Gelada.
And eventually was Lamictal prescribed by one of these providers?
Well, really by both. And when you say talking, it was a written communication and not a verbal one.
So do we know
And so
that they actually...
could you tell from the records whether or not Ms. Clancy filled the prescription for Lamictal?
Yes.
What is Lamictal?
Lamotrigine is actually, Lamictal is an anticonvulsant that was approved for bipolar disorder back in the early 2000s, I think 2003, for bipolar disorder. Now it's used for epilepsy, but also been found by the FDA to be extremely helpful in depression related to bipolar disorder.
And after receiving the 3 recommendations to try Lamictal and the prescription from Dr. Tufts, which she filled, did the defendant tell you whether or not she took the Lamictal?
She told me that she had decided not to take the Lamictal because she was concerned about the potential for a rash, a serious rash.
And
okay, hello. That sounds like paranoid to me and a little bit delusional. Like, you were experiencing really problematic symptoms. You're letting everyone know. You actually talked to someone, figured out Lamictal, and you're wanting to try it, but you're not going to try it because of a rash. Like, that to me seems like someone that is not thinking very well and isn't making great rational decisions. I mean, that's like, sounds like a pretty irrational fear to develop a rash. Or I don't know, I don't know.
the fact that 3 providers recommended this medication to help her and the defendant chose not to take it because of the potential of this rash, was that significant to you in any way in your evaluation?
Yes.
And how so?
Well, Dr. Tufts had written the prescription and it had been filled. Actually, Nurse Gelada also wrote a prescription for the Lamictal, and Ms. Clancy told her, well, you can cancel that because I already have a prescription
Okay, so she was
of Lamictal from Dr. Tufts.
Ridiculous.
What was concerning was that I don't see evidence that Dr. Tufts was notified that she had decided against the Lamictal. And so
so what?
that would have given a provider an opportunity to think about something else that also could help in this domain. But yet Ms. Clancy had decided not to take it, but also not to tell the doctor that she had decided not to take it.
5 different providers.
Doctor, was there also something that you noticed in the way Ms. Clancy described to you, how she was feeling at McLean Hospital when she was there versus the description of her feelings in the McLean records?
Yes.
And what was the difference between the two, and how was it significant in your evaluation?
I recall that she told me that her she felt like a zombie, very, very significantly affected. And certainly, while the records at McLean demonstrate that she was not doing well, there were differences in terms of how she characterized that.
Yeah,
and when a patient is
disorganized as
characterizing
fuck.
how she felt at a certain time in different ways, one to you and in a different way to her actual provider at the time, is that concerning in any way?
She was psychotic.
Well, yes.
And why is that?
Well, the more candid a patient can be with the symptoms that they're experiencing, the better able the prescriber is to make a determination about how best to treat those symptoms. And also, it can be very helpful in diagnosis as well.
Right, and that's why it's so important to really gain the trust of your patients that you're providing to, or else they're not going to tell you the truth. Like, if you enter into treatment with an offender as a clinical forensic psychologist and right away basically make them prove to you that what they're telling you is actually true, that's not like a great, baseline to be starting a trusting relationship where you're working together and feeling comfortable enough to report really personal things with someone, and she never had an opportunity to do that between all of these different providers. You know what I mean? That's like that's why it really is important to be able to provide in a way that is like compassionate and where you actually do give a fuck about these people.
And did you also take note of the appointment Dr. Tufts had with the defendant on January 23rd, 2023 in the records, and the fact that the defendant denied experiencing suicidal or homicidal ideation in that meeting?
Yes.
And how was that?
Yeah, but she had already reported suicidal thoughts like for months at this point. Like, what the fuck?
Significant if it was?
And she had also reported to several people where it was put on record that she had thoughts of harming her children by that point, which is super significant.
Well, Ms. Clancy had been looking into alternative treatments and had discussed with Dr. Tufts earlier the potential for esketamine. This is an FDA-approved medication that has to be administered by a doctor within a facility, but it can have rapid positive effects in treating depression. And so in that note, Dr. Tufts wrote that the potential for esketamine treatment or transcranial magnetic stimulation were ones that they were exploring.
Oh, so they were looking
Doctor,
into...
did you discuss with Ms. Clancy, or did she describe to you in any detail her ability to suppress her feelings and kind of mold her behavior into what she wanted people to see?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about that?
Well, I believe it was a Christmas time with her family, a morning breakfast, in which she stated she was not feeling well, not doing well, but yet felt the need to act like she was cooking and helping her husband cook. And she questioned why she would do that or engage in that behavior when her family knew that she was struggling and having difficulty.
Oh
so
my
she used the
God.
word.
That is so dumb. Like, of course, this is like literally what everyone would do. Don't you think? Like, of course, someone's going to try to be like putting on the best face around the holidays. I mean, especially as a mother, there's like so much pressure for you to be able to provide for your children. And if you're sitting here having all these like psych symptoms and stuff, like maybe you are afraid that you're not going to appear as desirable to your husband or something, which is our society and the pressures that we put on mothers and women. That is kind of the culprit of this. Like, I wouldn't say that her like being able to mask some of the symptoms like that is like suspicious of her lying about something. That's so normal, you know? And I think too, I remember hearing that her father-in-law reported earlier before we heard this testimony that over Christmas, she had kind of like a blank look and she was just seeming like pretty detached and she had lost a lot of weight. So if that's the same thing that he's just talking about, she didn't do that great of a job hiding it from the family, apparently. You know what I mean? That's why it's like important for him to like, did he talk to other family members? Like, to be honest, like, I feel like most men aren't very perceptive. You know, like, I think if she was shy and wasn't really wanting, like, very open and sharing some of her struggles in fear of losing her husband, I could see why, I guess, like, yeah, so.
Word fake with regard to just how she was attempting to present to her family. So this was on reflection in talking to me about that behavior at that time.
And did she also tell you about an incident at Spalding Hospital when she was interacting with a friend of hers who was visiting there after she went to Spalding Hospital for rehabilitation?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about that?
She told me that this friend who visited
I just went
a longtime friend from when
I just went off screen real quick. I'm still going to have the sound on, but I just need to do something that I can't do on camera. I'm going to smoke a cigarette. So.
They were both really quite young. And that when this friend visited, Ms. Clancy engaged in, trying to remember how she characterized it, gossip, really talking about kind of the old times and catching up basically on news that this friend, I believe her name was Amy Bevins.
Who cares?
They had similar or shared experiences. And so Ms. Clancy told me she was upset at Spalding Hospital because this superficial conversation that she had without discussion of the incident of 24 January 2023, that gave an impression, maybe a false impression of Ms. Clancy, and that it hurt the friendship as a result. And she felt that Spalding Hospital had they provided better psychiatric care, better mental health care, she would not have been so superficial in talking with her friend.
Did she also express anger to you that the staff at Spalding had prioritized her spinal cord injury needs over her mental health needs?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Did Ms. Clancy tell you or express anger to you that the staff at Spalding Hospital had prioritized her spinal cord injury needs over her mental health needs?
Yes.
Well, yeah, that makes total sense. When she fucking just killed her kids because she was experiencing auditory hallucinations and tried to kill herself, it makes sense. You know what I mean? Like,
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to put into evidence excerpts from the Spalding records showing the mental health consults and treatment of Ms. Clancy.
They may be admitted.
And so, doctor, did you have an opportunity to review the Spalding records?
Yes.
And did you see in the Spalding records that not only a psychiatrist, but also a psychologist and a social worker met with Ms. Clancy while she was at Spalding multiple times?
Yes.
And is there anything about the inconsistency of Ms. Clancy telling you that she didn't receive that treatment or that focus at Spalding versus what the records show that are significant in your evaluation of her?
Well, it's inconsistent and doesn't match up with that collateral information. So her depiction of the lack of mental health care at Spalding didn't match up with the.
okay, that is such bullshit. Honestly, this is so ridiculous. I can't even believe that he's testifying to this. Like, does he not realize, like, I just feel like there's like, hold on. Let me go back real quick.
Ms. Clancy.
They may be admitted.
She shows up at a hospital after trying to kill herself. She's paralyzed, and she just killed her 3 children because she's experiencing psychosis and auditory hallucinations. And she mentions that she was a little bit disappointed that they didn't focus more on her mental health symptoms. Well, no fucking shit. If they were more concerned about her spinal, and she's sitting here still having psychotic thoughts and hallucinating and like not being rational, even though she knows she just killed her kids or whatever, it would make sense that she would want that to be a focus of treatment. And as we've already seen, you know, the prosecution is sitting here being like, doesn't it show that she met with a social worker and a psychologist and a psychiatrist over her time there? Isn't that me getting a lot of treatment? And it's like, well, yeah, but we've already done a really good job proving that if someone is receiving like lots of treatment from lots of different people, definitely does not mean that they're actually receiving adequate care.
And so, doctor, did you have an opportunity to review the Spalding records?
Yes.
And did you see in the Spalding records that not only a psychiatrist, but also a psychologist and a social worker met with Ms. Clancy while she was at Spalding multiple times?
Yes.
And is there anything about the inconsistency of Ms. Clancy telling you that she didn't receive that treatment or that focus at Spalding versus what the records show that are significant in your evaluation of her?
Well, it's inconsistent and doesn't match up with that collateral information. So her depiction of the lack of mental health care at Spalding didn't match up with the evidence from Spalding in terms of the documents. Spalding is a rehab hospital, and that is they were really concentrated on the spinal injury, but also did have mental health services available.
And doctor, moving along in your analysis, did you look into and evaluate the defendant's decision to send Patrick Clancy on errands on January 24th, 2023?
Yes.
And what stood out to you as significant in what you learned from the records and from Ms. Clancy herself in that area?
I asked Ms. Clancy to tell me about that that afternoon, and specifically that decision for takeout. And as I recall, she told me that she texted her husband Patrick basically to say, "How what would you think about having takeout? It's been a long day," and which is a fairly broad, open-ended request, and that he responded positively. And from then, she made the arrangements to look up the distance between their home, and 3V restaurant in Plymouth, but also looking at basically making plans to have the food ordered. And she had texted her husband ultimately and asked him about to tell her what order to make. And so, in looking at the record, it was really reversed. Instead of starting with asking her husband, what would you think about takeout? How about getting takeout? The record shows that Ms. Clancy did a lot of searching prior to that in terms of 3V, the distance, and the like. So there were a number, getting information prior to requesting a text, or sending a text to her husband. And in the text, rather than saying, "What would you think about takeout?" Getting takeout, she said, "How about getting takeout at 3V? I am, it's been a long day, etc." And so this reversal in terms of what she told me and what actually we see in the collateral, I thought was significant.
How so?
Well, she told me that the only restaurant that she could remember about getting takeout was 3B. Patrick told me that they had never gotten takeout from 3B. He named West End Grill and Chestnut Grill as places that were in Duxbury and close by that they liked and that they often got takeout from. They had been to 3B and they liked it. They had gone as a family, but they had never gotten takeout there, takeout from 3B. And so presenting not just the idea of takeout, but how about 3B? And she had already done lots of checking about distance and the like. I thought was inconsistent. What I saw from the record was not what she told me in terms of the order in which she made those decisions, and so I saw that as being significant.
And was there a similar scenario with the request of Patrick from the defendant to also go to CVS?
Yes.
And so what was the difference between what she told you about the plan to go to CVS and or what she told Patrick and what she had done in terms of research?
Well, the research for, I think it was Miralax, which was suggested for Cora's constipation. They had an appointment that morning in pediatrics, and this was suggested that the Miralax and CVS was something that Ms. Clancy looked into sometime after 4 o'clock, but not long after 4 o'clock, and well before she contacted her husband. But that she did not communicate to her husband the importance of picking up Miralax at CVS, who she had called, until really right before he left. So he had planned on going to 3B, driving to 3B, almost 6 miles, to get the takeout. And then she also added on that other errand right before he left.
And so was it significant to you that she had researched the Miralax and looked into CVS an hour before, but just added that that part of the errand on right before her husband left?
Yes.
And why?
Well, it lengthened the trip. It added one extra obligation.
He already reported that she was having disorganized thoughts. Like, people like that are not being able to necessarily be super organized. Like, it's almost like he's saying that she was organized, but actually it sounds like she wasn't.
For Patrick, and that would make for a longer time that he was away.
And moving along in your analysis, you discuss Ms.
Did she tell him that? Did she say that that's why she sent him on a faraway task? Or is this people just assuming this?
Clancy's suicide attempt, and you say that it was serious, but required sequential decision making. Is that correct?
Can you just repeat that?
Sure. In your report, you describe Ms. Clancy's suicide attempt as serious, correct?
Correct.
And you also state that it required sequential decision making. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about why you found that it was serious and how you found that it required that sequential decision making?
Well, I think in looking over her records previous to that day, 24 January, she had contacted Aspire twice, the suicide hotline, and spoken to them. And really, as I recall, since early December.
She's reaching out to every place. Like, look at all these places that she reached out to and actively sought treatment for these symptoms. I mean, even though maybe she wasn't able to exactly express in 100%, perfect recollection and the same story every single time across 3 years and being psychotic or not. And after a huge trauma, why are these things even being talked about right now? It really is not significant.
Had been speaking about suicidal ideation. So this was something that that was significant for her. There was, of course, an assessment that in the emergency department that on the 15th of December. So you look through the record and that you do see that she was concerned about self-harm and suicidal ideation.
Okay.
If we look at the actual day after the children were killed, or after the children were strangled, Callan was still living at the time that EMS arrived. She told me that she got a knife from the butcher block in the kitchen, and then went upstairs and attempted to cut herself. That she also took pills or took an overdose. And
Wow.
I asked her about that, really trying to understand,
No, overall.
really to try and understand how she accomplished the overdose. Because if you're swallowing lots and lots of pills, that can be difficult. And so essentially how many handfuls of pills did you take or whatever? And then
Can you imagine?
she told me that she had.
Can you imagine if I wasn't listening to this on a replay of like sped up 1.7 times? Like, he is seriously talking so freaking slow.
Slashed the screen and dove out the window.
Doctor, if I could ask you a question. In
This guy's too old. I feel like this guy's too old.
terms of taking the pills, what did Ms. Clancy tell you about how she took the pills?
I'm sorry.
What did Ms. Clancy tell you about how she took the pills?
It wasn't really very clear. I was.
Objection. The question, what she said. It's the question.
Do you recall what she said?
I'm sorry.
Do you recall what she said about taking the pills, whether she took handfuls or did something else?
Oh, she did not say that she took handfuls. She did not describe the overdose in any specific terms.
Did she tell you anything about crushing up pills?
Objection. Leading question.
It's already been answered. Next question.
Did she give you any other information about taking the pills?
No.
Now, if you could tell us that portion that I asked you about earlier, what is sequential decision making, and how did you see that in her behavior?
Well, as I mentioned, after strangling the 3 children with the exercise bands, she went up the steps, went to the kitchen, she got a knife, and then ascended yet another group of steps to her bedroom, to their bedroom, and described the attempt or cutting her wrists as well as her neck, and also described the overdose in barely. It's just hard for me to get a good idea about how specifically the overdose occurred, what she did, but she omitted some things that I thought were significant.
And what things did she omit that you think were significant?
Well, she omitted the fact that she had actually crushed the pills, and I found that to be quite significant.
And how did you learn that she had crushed the pills?
I learned after interviewing her husband, Patrick, and he went through that evening and talked about coming to the home and the like, and mentioned that on the bedside table, there was a wine tumbler with powdered medication, crushed up medication, that there was still some in the wine tumbler. And I had not heard, she had not told me that she had actually crushed medication. And I know that in Dr. Resnick's report, and also in what Lindsay Clancy told me, that she had lemonade in that wine tumbler when she took the overdose. And when I asked Patrick Clancy, he told me that he didn't think they had any lemonade in the house, that was not typical at all.
And Doctor, what is the significance? I'm sorry, were you not finished?
You done with that? You done with that answer? All right, next question.
And so, Doctor, what is the significance to you, if anything, of this atypical use of lemonade and the crushed powder in the cup?
You say what is atypical?
Well, I think you just said that Patrick Clancy said it wasn't typical to have lemonade, correct?
Correct.
So is there any significance to you to the fact that there was lemonade in the cup and that there was powder residue in the cup? Or straight that, was there any significance to the fact that Lindsay Clancy told you that there was lemonade in the cup and that Patrick Clancy saw powdered residue in the cup?
Yes, it made sense that lemonade would be in the cup if you're trying to take an overdose of medication that you've crushed, just because of the bitterness that these pills have. So that made sense. I asked her more about the lemonade, and she told me that it had been in the wine tumbler from the night before.
And in terms of the...
Okay, so maybe it wasn't her meds that were crushed up then. I mean, if she was given Miralax prescription that day, maybe she was like using a different like stool softener medication in her, like, did they test what was actually in that cup? Like, do we know that it was her meds crushed up? And again, like, even if it was, like, so what? Like, that would be something else that would be a part of the disorganized like thought process of a psychotic person. Like they're not going to necessarily be like, oh yeah, and I remember that I did this too. It's like, no, I know that I just took some meds and I tried to jump out the window. She's not going to be like, and then I made sure to open the window this way and make sure that this was going this way too, or like even be remembering those factors. Like it just seems very strange to me for him to be talking like this is significant shit.
Decision-making process. Like what types of decisions is she making? Are you referring to, what to take and how to take it and when to take it and when to cut herself, those types of decisions?
Well,
she is a nurse.
Crushing pills is really a challenge if you don't have the right equipment, if you don't have like a mortar and a pestle that they might have in a pharmacy. And so what I wondered about was that process of crushing the pills to the point that they were powder in order then to put them in lemonade and then drink them.
Okay, seriously though, like I've crushed up pills before and it really does not take that much. Like all you would need to do is just like with the glass that she was drinking the lemonade out of, just press down on the pills. Like that doesn't seem crazy to me at all. And we don't even know for sure if it's been confirmed that those were even her pills. Again, it might have just been like another similar Miralax, like, powder that you put into a drink for stool softening.
Yeah. And so that is, to crush pills, significant number of pills into fine powder is not an easy thing to do, particularly if you don't have the right equipment.
Does he have a picture of what this like crushed up stuff looks like? Why is he assuming it's in a super fine powder? Like it sounds like Clancy, like Patrick Clancy just described. Yeah, I noticed, but also he went through a huge trauma. Like he probably doesn't just like remember the specifics of that stuff like that specifically. I mean, is he really being like, because it was so fine, like, do we really know it was fine? And do we really know it wasn't like Miralax?
It's just kind of a laborious process.
I don't like
so. And she also did not, it was Patrick Clancy who told me about the door being locked. And she told me she did not recall locking the door.
She didn't fucking recall.
In terms of Ms. Clancy's ability to execute the strangulation of her children, is there anything about how she did it, what she did, that stood out to you in your evaluation?
Yes.
And what is that?
Ms. Clancy told me that she, after the phone call with her husband, she returned the call, that was when she took Dawson down the steps into her husband's office to strangle him. And I asked Ms. Clancy about what she remembered about what she said to Dawson to get him to go down the steps and leave his sister and brother upstairs. And was there resistance, verbalization, et cetera, crying? And she said she could not recall that. She could only recall bringing him down the steps and then strangling him.
So what?
And then she repeated that. The next child was Cora, that she went back upstairs and did not recall how she got Cora down the steps, how Cora came down the steps, but then brought her into a different area, the kind of living room area in the basement, and strangled Cora. And then lastly, that she went up to get Callan. And I asked her, I said, where was Callan? Upstairs. And she said, well, maybe in a playpen, often, she said she couldn't really remember, but then bringing Callan down. And he was the last child to be strangled, all during this time where this voice is over and over again saying, this is your last chance. You have to kill the child.
Yeah, it sounds like she had other things to be paying attention to at that time period, like, controlling these crazy voices that are telling her to kill her kids, and then also the process of killing her kids, which is really traumatic in itself. So it's not super surprising that she doesn't remember these exact fucking details. That's totally normal of anyone that would be committing any crime or anyone that went through any trauma. Like, it's just as likely that Patrick Clancy is misremembering a lot of these details. Like, this is so silly that he thinks it's appropriate to testify this specifically to this stuff when it's like not factual at all. Like, how does he feel comfortable doing this? You know what I mean? No one should feel comfortable like making assumptions like this and testifying to it in someone's fucking murder trial.
Children before you kill yourself.
Doctor, is there any significance to the fact that this voice is telling her to kill the children, but not telling her how to kill the children?
Yes.
And what is that?
Just like adults, children have a will to survive, strong will to survive. I think it's just part of being human. And so I know that Dr. Resnick described Ms. Clancy as acting as if she were a puppet. But the children are not puppets. And just in looking at the Cape Codder video where Ms. Clancy is holding Callan and Dawson and Cora are there, I mean, they both are active. They can walk, they can run. And so to make the determination about
I just love right now this picture. It shouldn't be funny, but I feel the same way that her lawyer is displaying right now. He's just like, what the fuck is even? I would have such issues if I was him to not just be like yelling at this witness the entire time that he's being questioned, you know?
I'm going to object.
Oh, wait, I guess.
All right, can I see counsel at sidebar?
He looks so pissed. Oh, is it over? Okay, nice. Wait.
After 5.5 weeks, testimony in the Lindsay Clancy.
Stop. Okay, sorry. I'm going to stop sharing this. Okay, so, well, that was part 1 of the testimony that I wanted to review today. And like I said, tomorrow I am planning on streaming the closing arguments and also trying to review the part 2 of Dr. Satoff. Honestly, this portion of his testimony was not that interesting, I didn't think. So hopefully it gets a little more spicier tomorrow. But if anyone has any like thoughts or feedback on, I guess, the way that I am reacting or information that you might want specifically or questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll check them. And probably won't be enough time to like get much feedback before I stream again tomorrow during closing arguments, but that's no big deal. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to continue doing this, although it did get kind of annoying with how fucking slow this guy is talking, but that's fine. So I think I'll sign off here. I was planning on only maybe like going for like an hour and a half tonight, but I think I'm glad that I was able to finish through the entirety of part 1. And it looks like if I keep up at the speed of replay, which is 1.7 playback speed, I did the math on part 2. It's 3 hours long, but if we played at 0.7 playback speed, it'll only be an hour and 45 minutes that I'll react. And I also won't be talking this time and doing the introduction to the case. I'll just be going right into the reaction of the testimony. So yeah, I don't think there was anything that I really came up where I wanted to follow up about in this testimony. I don't believe. I was taking notes and nothing really like stuck out to me. So hopefully this was informative or interesting to people, and thank you so much for being here. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please do. It's free and it helps the channel out a lot. It doesn't cost any money, and I'm really trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I'm halfway there. So I think my next goal is 1,000, and I think it would be a little, you know, I don't know, I might be setting my expectations too high, but I think I'm going to set a goal of 1,000 subscribers to subscribe by the beginning of October. So like about another month. Anyways, thank you all for being here, and I will see y'all tomorrow. Peace and love. Bye. Lila says bye too. Say bye, Lila.